Lieutenant Mara Kellen's patrol ship descended through pale green clouds until it settled on the wide, grassy plains of Sina Prime. The ship's ramps extended with a soft hiss, and the human crew trooped onto the ground. Tall grasses swayed in a light breeze, and colorful birds called from the trees beyond. Mara paused at the edge of the landing pad, shield raised against the sun's glare, and scanned the horizon. This was her first mission to a new world. Her dark uniform and steady posture spoke of confidence, but inside she felt a thrill of wonder at the alien sky above. Dr. Aya Thressa stepped forward from a small group of Sina Prime biologists. Her skin was pale blue and her amber eyes shone with curiosity. In her culture, touch was a private act, used only in the deepest traditions of courtship. Aya's people greeted with a gentle nod or by sharing thought patterns through their antennas. Mara's decision to hold her hand and bow had startled Aya more than she expected. Now, as the human ship's engines cooled, she kept her fingertips tucked at her sides, uncertain how to behave around these tall, strange visitors. Mara approached slowly, hand extended but arm relaxed. She bowed at the waist. A common human, gesture signaling respect rather than submission. "Welcome to Sina Prime," she said in clear, careful speech. Aya blinked, her mouth parting in surprise. She felt a sudden prickling along her antennae, a sign of confusion in her body. Why did the human soldier bow? Was this a sign of weakness or a ritual of challenge? Aya did not know. She kept her hands folded, eyes wide, as the human stepped forward in file. Behind Mara, the human science officer, Captain Shea, began unpacking small scanners. The devices chirped softly as they warmed up. The crew moved with calm efficiency, but Aya noticed their frequent glances at her. She cleared her throat and tried to read the human field guide. The pages described body language, common words, and polite forms, but nothing warned her about the gesture she had just seen. In Sina Prime's Guide to Etiquette, any hand-holding outside formal mating rites would be shocking. Aya's heart beat faster as she struggled to hide her uncertainty. Mara knelt to place a small marker in the grass. "This will measure ambient energy," she explained, tapping the device with her gauntlet. She looked up at Aya. "Your help will speed things along." Aya swallowed and nodded, stepping forward. As she bent to examine the marker, she almost reached out her own hand but pulled back at the last moment. Her mind raced. Did she offend the humans? Was she too rigid? Too careful? The breeze rustled around them, carrying a scent like wild citrus and damp earth. Slowly, Aya set one scanner beside the marker, her antennae lowering in concentration. The human crew erected a light tower nearby. It glowed with soft blue brilliance, bright enough for the approaching night but gentle on the eyes. Aya watched the humans work, impressed by their practiced teamwork. She remembered stories of human explorers on other worlds. They spoke of bravery in the face of storms, but also of kindness in small acts. Still, the memory of Mara's hand-holding lingered. Aya opened her guide again, tracing the simple illustrations of a bow. She read the caption, "A sign of mutual respect and greeting." The words felt strange on her tongue. Mara stood and dusted off her uniform. She turned to Aya, offering a small nod. "Thank you for your help," she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, she reached out again, this time to point at the sky, showing the path of two moons rising above distant hills. Aya followed her gesture, eyes drawn to the silvery lights. The moons were new to her, too, but she felt a shared wonder in Mara's voice. She swallowed her fears and offered a soft nod in return. As the last light of day faded, human lanterns and Sina Prime bioluminescent vines both glowed around the landing site. Aya felt a cautious hope. The humans were not invaders. They were travelers seeking knowledge, and this curious hand-holding bow might be a bridge between two very different peoples. She gathered her courage and stepped closer to Mara, determined to learn this new form of greeting. In that moment, Aya realized that first impressions could lead to lasting friendships, if she could only master the meaning behind a simple bow. The next morning, soft light filtered through the translucent leaves of the alien trees. At the joint, Research station's open courtyard, Captain Shea gathered both human and Cena Prime teams for a polite opening ceremony. Aya Thressa stood beside Lieutenant Mara Kellen on a raised dais. Humans wore crisp uniforms, and Cena Primes wore flowing robes of pale green. Each side faced the other across a low barrier of bioluminescent ferns that glowed gently in the dawn light. Captain Shea cleared his throat. "Today, we begin our work together in peace and respect," he announced. He bowed deeply, touching his right hand to his chest and dipping forward. The humans echoed his movement with practiced uniformity. The Cena Prime delegates, led by Elder Rin Thesa, watched in silence. Rin inclined her head once, imperceptibly. Aya felt her antennae quiver. In her culture, bowing so deeply would signal submission or sorrow. She wondered if the humans saw Cena Primes as inferior. When the ceremony ended, the teams broke into smaller groups. Aya joined a human etiquette lesson led by civilian diplomat Sita Arnon, while Mara attended a technical briefing on local geology. Aya sat on a smooth bench beside Sita, holding a slim guidebook titled Human Manners for First Contacts. The book's pages were bright and clear, but the pictures seemed odd. There were illustrations of handshakes, pats on the shoulder, and even hugs. Aya flipped to the section on bowing. Sita smiled gently. "Do you find it strange?" she asked. Her voice was soft, measured. Aya nodded. "In my world, we only touch during the courtship dance," Aya whispered. "And we bow only at funerals or when we beg forgiveness." Sita's eyebrows rose, but she did not laugh. Instead, she said, "Humans bow to show respect, not weakness. It is polite. We touch hands to show trust." She offered Aya her hand in a light clasp. Aya's chest tightened. She recalled how her people would blush at a similar touch. Across the courtyard, Mara studied a digital map of the deep canyon where rare crystals lay hidden. She tapped on a glowing screen and explained to her human engineers how the crystals might power their scanners. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted back to Aya. She remembered how tense Aya had been when they first met. She wondered what it would take to help Aya feel at ease with human customs. Aya practiced the bow on her own beside a low wall. She leaned forward, then straightened. She adjusted her posture, trying to find the right balance. Each time, her antennae drooped or flicked, betraying her discomfort. A group of Cena Prime students passed by and gave her puzzled looks. One whispered, "Are you honoring death again?" Aya's face warmed. She forced a small smile and moved away. At lunchtime, humans and Cena Primes sat around long tables under sheltering canopies. On one side, steamed vegetables and fresh fruit. On the other, thin metal trays of human protein packs and boiled roots. Aya sampled a protein pack and found it bland but filling. Mara sat next to her and offered a slice of grilled fruit from the Cena Prime side. Aya accepted it gratefully. They ate in companionable silence, watching technicians repair the station's energy cores. Suddenly, a young Cena Prime delegate stood and raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said in clear common tongue. "I observe humans placing their free hand over their heart when they bow. May I ask why?" All heads turned. Aya felt the heat of attention. Mara put down her fruit slice and spoke up. "It's to show the bow is sincere," she explained. "The hand over the heart means you speak from your feelings." Elder Rin nodded thoughtfully, then inclined her head in a graceful bow. The Moisio. Courtyard fell quiet. Aya's heart pounded. She looked at Mara and then at the guidebook she held. Sita had said sincerity was key. Aya took a deep breath. She stood and faced Mara. She raised her right hand to her chest, then bent forward in a modest bow. Her antennae rose stiffly but did not droop. Silence waited for a moment. Then Mara straightened and mirrored Aya's gesture exactly. An unexpected cheer rose from both sides. Cena Prime students clapped respectfully and humans offered warm smiles. Aya felt a strange lightness in her chest. Even if the movement felt odd, it had connected two people of different worlds. Captain Shea approached, with a pleased expression. "Excellent work," he said. By learning each other's ways, we build real friendship. Aya glanced at Mara, whose eyes shone with pride. That afternoon, protocols continued with fewer awkward pauses. Aya walked through the station's halls, reading sections of the etiquette guide aloud to curious engineers. They tested new bow, variations, some deeper, some slight nods, and laughed at the practice's novelty. By the end of the day, Aya understood that mistakes were part of learning. She realized that loving curiosity could bridge the widest gaps. As the twin moons rose again, Aya felt hopeful. Tomorrow, she would teach the humans how to share thought patterns, and they would learn together what it truly meant to respect another being. The wind rose suddenly that morning, stirring the tall grasses into rippling waves. Dark clouds gathered over the research station's horizon. A hidden fault in the ancient relay tower, a structure left by a vanished race, had cut off all long-range communications. Captain Shea's voice crackled over internal channels. "We have 24 hours before backups fail. We need the REL." "I fixed now." Lieutenant Mara Kellen studied the digital readout. The relay lay 10 kilometers southwest, beyond the grasslands and into the shifting red sands of the Dunari expanse. Aya Thressa stepped forward. "I know the terrain," she offered. Her guidebooks on desert flora and fauna gave her a rough map of safe paths. Mara nodded. "Let's move fast. We'll go together." They set out at midday under a pale sun. Mara led with her survival pack and scanner, while Aya carried a small toolkit and samples of local plants. At first, their steps were cautious. Aya watched Mara's confident stride. Mara noted how Aya paused before each strange flowering bush, touching its petals with gentle care. Their worlds felt different, but necessity drew them closer as they crossed into the Dunari hills. By afternoon, the sky darkened further. A sandstorm swept in from the east, turning the air orange. Mara tightened her goggles and held out a firm hand. Aya hesitated, then grasped it. The simple touch grounded her as wind whipped around them. Together they pressed forward, eyes shielded as grains of sand stung their cheeks. At one point, a flash of movement erupted. A pack of dune raptors, thin-legged creatures with glowing eyes, sprinted across their path. Mara raised her arm, signaling Aya to stay low. Aya remembered the raptor's habit of avoiding bright surfaces. She slipped a piece of polished metal from her pack and angled it to catch the weak sunlight through the dust. A bright glint caused the raptors to halt, confused. They skidded apart and vanished into the storm. Mara exhaled. "Good thinking." She offered Aya a quick, proud smile. Aya felt relief and pride swell inside her chest. Night fell while the storm raged. Water reserves were low, and their scanners showed no shelter ahead. Aya's antennas drooped with fatigue and thirst. Mara set down her pack and drew out a compact water purifier. "We share," she said simply, handing Aya a sip from her ration. Aya accepted gratefully, then used the leftovers to soak a bit of local moss Mara had found earlier. The moss released moisture they both drank. Later, in the storm's eye, they spotted the relay tower's beacon light, a faint green glow through swirling dust. The structure was taller than either expected, its metal frame scarred by time. Mara guided Aya to a maintenance hatch. Inside, cables were frayed and circuits scorched by static. Aya knelt beside a control panel and studied the alien markings. "These symbols match my notes," she murmured. She connected a small translator device and deciphered the sequence. Mara climbed the tower's ladder to inspect the external antennae. Below, Aya replaced bad capacitors with human parts, soldering connections with steady hands. Sparks flew, but both wore protective gloves and masks. As Aya worked, she realized how Mara's presence calmed her nerves. Mara called down instructions in clear, calm tones. Aya followed each one, heart steadying. Finally, Aya flipped a switch. A soft hum began. Mara shouted, "We have power!" Outside, the relay's beacon glowed stronger, cutting through the storm. Communication sprang to life, sending a burst of signals back to the station. The crisis was averted. They climbed down together as the sky brightened to a dull gray. The storm moved on, leaving a quiet calm. Mara clapped Aya's shoulder. "We made a great team." Aya smiled, her fear gone. She offered a deep bow in the human-Cena hybrid style, hand over heart, a nod forward. Mara matched the gesture. In that humble exchange, they sealed a bond stronger than any protocol. As they walked back toward the station under clearing skies, both felt the promise of true partnership. They were no longer just liaison and soldier. They were friends, united by trust, respect, and the shared triumph over an unforgiving world. Tomorrow, the High Council would hear of their success. But tonight, under the wide expanse of an alien sky, Aya and Mara simply walked side by side, hands almost touching, ready for whatever came next. Night fell over the red dunes of Dunari Expanse, and 2 moons rose in the clear sky. Their light painted silver patterns across the sand. Lieutenant Mara Kellen and Dr. Aya Thressa stood before a carved stone arch, the entrance to an ancient shrine. The wind whispered through the hollow columns, carrying a faint hum of history. Mara held a small lantern to light the path. Aya's blue skin shone ghostly under the moons. She felt a thrill of awe and a little fear. Mara turned to Aya, gently taking her hand. "Here, I will show you something," she said. Aya's heart fluttered. She recalled their first meeting, that surprising bow and handhold. Now, in this quiet place, she trusted Mara's calm voice. Mara guided Aya beneath the arch and stopped at a stone altar. On its surface lay painted symbols, curved lines and dots resembling the 2 moons. Mara pointed to the symbols and then bowed her head slightly, placing her free hand over her heart. "This is how humans honor something greater than ourselves," she explained. "It shows respect, trust, and peace. It is not just a ritual, it is a promise to act with honor." Mara's tone was soft, almost reverent. Aya watched her, absorbing every word. She felt the gesture's warmth. Aya's antennas trembled as she tried to understand. In Cena Prime tradition, they shared thought patterns to show trust, but this silent bow spoke in action, not thoughts. Aya raised her eyes to the carved moons overhead. She remembered the fear she felt when the relay storm raged, and how Mara had stayed by her side. Slowly, Aya let Mara's hand go and placed her right hand over her own heart. She bent forward in a careful bow, copying Mara's posture. The wind stilled for a moment, as if the world waited. Aya straightened and looked into Mara's eyes. A tranquil smile appeared on Mara's face. She bowed in return, touching her chest just as Aya had. The echo of their gestures felt sacred in the ancient shrine. Aya sensed a deep connection, one that went beyond their different bodies and languages. Suddenly, soft rustling sounded among the dune grass just outside the arch. 2 luminescent creatures, tall, slender, with glowing stripes, slipped into the lantern's light. They circled the pair at a careful distance, curiosity in their large eyes. In Cena Prime lore, these creatures were guardians of lost places. Their appearance now felt like a blessing. Mara crouched low, hands open. She spoke in a calm voice. "We mean no harm," she said, bowing once more. Aya repeated the gesture. The creatures paused, then stepped closer. One brushed its glowing horn against Aya's knee in a gentle touch. Aya gasped softly but did not pull away. She bowed again in respect. The lantern light glinted off the creatures' coats as they nodded almost imperceptibly. When the guardian slipped back into the dunes, Aya exhaled. She turned to Mara, eyes bright. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me this ritual." Mara smiled and clasped Aya's shoulder. "Thank you for learning it with me." Side by side, they walked out of the shrine under 2 moons, their hearts joined by a gesture older than any book. In that moment, Aya understood that respect could be shown in silence and that sometimes the simplest ritual carried the greatest power. Dawn broke with an uneasy quiet over the joint research station. Human lanterns and bioluminescent vines still glowed softly, but the usual hum of activity was gone. Lieutenant Mara Kellen stood at the central tower, scanning the horizon through her binoculars. Her heart tightened when she saw a column of dust rising in the distance, too precise to be a sandstorm. Dr. Aya Thressa joined her at the railing. Her amber eyes widened as she recognized the marking on the dust cloud, the black and gold banner of the Saran Zealots, a radical faction of her own people. Those extremists believed humans would destroy Sina Prime's sacred lands and would stop at nothing to drive them away. Aya's antennae twitched with fear and shame. She had to face them, but she trembled at the thought of violence. Mara placed a reassuring hand on Aya's shoulder. "We'll protect the station," she said firmly. Aya nodded, swallowing her dread. Below them, human engineers hurried to secure doors and lock airlocks. Sina Prime defenders formed ranks beside them, wearing light armor and wielding tranquilizer nets powered by bioluminescent energy. Both sides worked in tense silence, united by a shared goal: keep hostile forces outside. As the Zealots' warbands appeared on the plain, drums sounded across the dunes. The station's alarm bell rang sharply. Aya and Mara ran down the spiral staircase to the courtyard. There, dozens of Zealot fighters emerged, faces painted and eyes fierce. They carried heavy spears and strange devices that crackled with static. Elder Rinthesa stepped forward to parley. "Leave now, or we will defend our world," she called. A lead Zealot sneered and raised his spear. Mara stepped between Aya and the Zealot. She raised her voice so both sides could hear. "We are not your enemy. We came in peace to learn and share knowledge," she called out. Aya joined in, voice trembling but clear. "We want friendship, not war." The Zealot laughed. "Friendship is a human trick," he shouted, and signal drums rolled. In that moment, all reason seemed lost. A hush fell. Then, without warning, a Zealot hurled a stun grenade toward the defenders. It burst in a flash of blue light. Sina Prime guards cried out as nets wrapped around them, and human engineers ducked for cover. Aya's heart pounded. She saw Elder Rin collapse to one knee, net wires limiting her movement. Mara drew her sidearm, aiming for the grenade launcher overhead. "Cover me!" Mara shouted to a nearby engineer. He fired a precision shot and hit the launcher, silencing its crackle. Meanwhile, Aya sprinted to Elder Rin's side. She knelt and pressed her hands to Rin's helmet, sending gentle thought patterns to calm her panic. "You are safe," Aya sent. "We will stop them." Rin's breath steadied and she nodded. Mara and two engineers formed a protective circle around Aya and Rin. They advanced toward the Zealots in measured steps. Each step brought human rifles and Sina Prime stun nets into position. The Zealots raised their weapons again, but hesitation flickered in their ranks. They had not expected united resistance. Aya rose and stood beside Mara. She took a deep breath and called out, "This station is under joint protection. If you fire another shot, you will harm all of us, human and Sina Prime alike." Her voice was firm, carrying the quiet power of her calm mind. Mara bowed her head respectfully, hand on heart, beside Aya. Together, their gestures signaled unbreakable unity. For a long moment, the Zealot leader stared at them, then at his own fighters. He spat on the ground. "This changes nothing," he growled. But the others glanced at each other, uncertain. The Zealot screamed a command, but only half of his warband moved. The rest hesitated, torn between loyalty and doubt. Mara seized the chance. She raised her voice. "Lay down your arms and stand with us in peace." A few Zealots let their weapons fall, nets loosening and clattering on the ground. The leader roared in anger and took a step forward, spear raised. Aya stepped between him and Mara. Calmly, she pressed a small device to his arm. It sent a wave of soothing light into his neural pathways, a non-lethal Sina Prime method to slow aggression. His spear clattered to the ground as he collapsed into a gentle, trance-like state. Silence reigned. The surviving Zealots looked at their fallen leader in shock. Elder Rin stood and bowed low to both Mara and Aya. "You have saved us all," she said. "You have shown me the strength of unity." Mara lowered her weapon and offered Aya her hand. Aya grasped it and bowed in the human-Cena hybrid style. The courtyard filled with relieved cheers from both humans and Cena Prime defenders. That day, Aya and Mara's brave stand became legend at the station. They had faced hatred and violence and turned it back with courage, compassion, and unity. In doing so, they proved that respect and trust could conquer even the fiercest threats. As the sun set, both peoples gathered to heal the wounded and tend the captured zealots with mercy. And in the quiet that followed, Aya and Mara stood side by side, hands still joined, knowing their bond had saved more than a research station. It had saved hope for 2 worlds. Early the next morning, the FUR, Joint Research Station, hummed with cautious optimism. Human engineers and Cena Prime defenders worked side by side to repair walls and restore power. Aya Thressa and Lieutenant Mara Kellen met at the station's command center, a glass-walled room filled with flickering screens. A map of the outer perimeter glowed on the largest display. Small symbols marked the positions of human squads and Cena Prime patrols. Both knew that pockets of Saran zealots still lurked beyond the dunes. Today, they would face another test. Mara tapped a symbol on the map. "They are moving in 2 squads," she said, pointing to 2 red icons creeping closer. One group by the eastern gate, the other near the science wing. She drew a deep breath. "We must hold both points to keep everyone safe." Aya nodded. She opened a hologuide on the screen, showing how Cena Prime stun nets and human grenades could work together. "If we combine our nets with stun charges," Aya explained, "we can slow them until reinforcements arrive." Mara's dark eyes lit up. "And if we set up a barrier of drones above the gate," she added, "we can force them into our trap." By midday, mixed teams assembled across the courtyard. Human soldiers checked energy grenades and carried thin metal cases of stun net charges. Cena Prime defenders adjusted the glowing filaments of their bioluminescent nets and secured wrist-mounted launchers. Aya walked between the groups, offering calm words in her soft voice. "Remember," she said, "we stand together. We protect each other." Mara stood at the front, rifle slung over her shoulder. She bowed once, hand on heart, a gesture now familiar to both sides. The teams echoed the bow in a single motion. Then at Aya's signal, they moved out toward the eastern gate. The dune wind carried distant echoes of battle as the mixed force approached. The eastern gate was a low arch of stone and metal, half buried in sand. 2 human guards waited behind, reinforced shields. On a nearby ridge, 2 Cena Prime snipers crouched with long-range stun rifles. At Aya's hand signal, the snipers aimed at the ridge beyond the gate, where a dozen zealots crept forward. Mara and 4 soldiers took cover. Behind a low wall ready to toss grenades, a sudden horn blast signaled the attack. Zealots dashed toward the gate, shouting cries of defiance. The Cena Prime snipers fired first. Nets of glowing green filaments shot out, wrapping around 2 zealots and pinning them to the sand. The others faltered, unsure. Mara counted down, on her comm, 3, 2, 1. Then human soldiers hurled stun grenades over the wall. The grenades detonated in silent flashes, sending pulses that disrupted the zealots' balance. They stumbled, trapped by both nets and concussive bursts. Mara spotted a small group trying to flank around a sand dune. She sprinted forward, rifle at the ready. Aya rose beside her, lifting a net launcher. Together, they fired at the flanking zealots. The nets wrapped around their legs, and one grenade blast sent them sprawling. Within moments, all attackers lay stunned or entangled. Human medics and Cena Prime healers moved in, securing prisoners and offering truce talks. A cheer rose from the joint force, but their work was not done. At the science wing entrance, a second squad of zealots had begun an assault. Heavy tools and broken stones lay scattered where they tried to breach the lab doors. Captain Shea's engineering team was trapped inside. Aya and Mara raced across the open courtyard side by side. Soldiers opened fire overhead in careful arcs, keeping the zealots at bay. Aya tapped her translator device, sending calm thoughts to the defenders inside, guiding them to safety. One by one, engineers slipped out through a side passage. Mara covered their exit with precise rifle fire. Once everyone was safe, the two leaders set their final trap. They anchored stun nets between support pillars and rigged grenades to trigger if nets were torn. Then they waited. The zealots, furious at their failure at the gate, charged the lab entrance. At the last moment, Aya gave the signal. A soft thunk echoed as the grenades released. A wave of blue light and a net barrier burst into place. The zealots were caught in a flickering web of energy and light. Disoriented, they fell to their knees as uniformed soldiers ved in to secure them. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of power generators. Slowly both sides approached. A human corporal removed his helmet and bowed in the human Cena hybrid style, hand on heart. A Cena Prime defender returned the bow. Mara and Aya met in the clearing, where fallen nets lay like glowing lace on the sand. They bowed together, then clasped hands firmly. Around them, humans and Cena Prime delegates formed a circle, sharing weary but triumphant smiles. Back, at the station, wounds were tended and prisoners given food and water. Elder Rin Thesa addressed the gathered crowd. Today we faced those who sought division and fear. We answered with unity and trust, she declared. Let this victory remind us that together, we are stronger. Applause echoed under the twin moons now rising. Aya glanced at Mara, feeling pride and affection. Mara nodded as if to say, we did this, together. That night, laughter and conversation filled the courtyard, mingling human songs with Cena Prime melody. Lights from both cultures blended in a gentle glow. Aya and Mara stood at the edge of the festivities, looking out at the two worlds joining as one. In that moment, they knew their alliance had not only saved a station, it had built a lasting bridge between species. Their bond, forged in danger and respect, would guide humanity and Cena Prime toward a shared future of peace and discovery. The following morning, the sky was clear and bright over the joint research station. Human and Cena Prime banners fluttered side by side from the highest towers. Aya Thressa stood beside Lieutenant Mara Kellen at the central plaza, where delegates from both worlds gathered. The crowd hushed as Elder Rin Thesa stepped forward, her pale green robes glowing in the sunlight. She held an iridescent crystal, the symbol of mutual trust, and raised it high above her head. Today, Elder Rin announced, we mark the beginning of a shared future. She gestured toward the crystal, which refracted light into dancing colors on the plaza stones. Aya's heart swelled with pride. She glanced at Mara, whose dark uniform and steady gaze spoke of quiet strength. Together, they had faced storms, creatures, and zealots, and now they would guide their peoples to peace. Captain Shea read from a polished tablet. By agreement of the Human Council and the Senate of Cena Prime, we established the Unity Accord. We pledged to share knowledge, technology, and friendship in the years to come. Humans murmured approval, and Cena Prime delegates nodded. Aya felt a warm glow as she saw engineers shaking hands with local scholars, and soldiers bowing side by side with Cena Prime defenders. Mara stepped forward next to Aya. She bowed at the waist, hand on heart, in the hybrid gesture they had perfected together. I am honored to stand with you all, Mara said in clear common tongue. May our partnership bring discoveries that benefit every being under these twin moons. Her words rang true. Every person in the plaza felt the hope they carried. Aya's antennae trembled as she raised her right hand to her chest and bent forward in return. She spoke softly but firmly. Let this bow be a promise of respect, trust, and unity. We will learn from each other and protect one another. A gentle cheer rose, and the crystal in Elder Rin's hand pulsed with blue light, echoing the bioluminescent glow of Cena Prime's deepest forests. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed into small groups. Aya and Mara walked among them, greeting old friends and new allies. They paused at a holographic display showing future plans, a combined research lab, teacher exchanges, and protected conservation zones on Cena Prime's wild plains. Engineers from both sides crowded around the plans, pointing at details and discussing timelines. Aya smiled as she watched humans and Cena Primes share ideas. Near the newly repaired relay tower, a group of children, half human, half Cena Prime, played under the watchful eyes of their parents. They chased light drones that fluttered above the grass like glowing insects. Aya knelt beside a young girl with pale blue skin and bright amber eyes. The girl bowed to Aya, hand on heart, then giggled, as Aya gently returned the gesture. Mara stood behind them, her face softening at the sight. As afternoon light turned golden, Mara and Aya climbed to the top of the western observation deck. They looked out over the plains, where human settlers and Cena Prime farmers worked side by side to plant new groves of fruit trees and grain fields. The twin moons rose in the east, their silver glow already visible. Aya rested her hand lightly on Mara's arm. "We did this," she said quietly. Mara nodded. "Together," she replied. Below them, the station's lanterns and vines lit, up one by one, creating a ribbon of light that wound through the trees and buildings. Aya took a deep breath of the cool evening air. She remembered her first moment with Mara, when a simple bow had meant nothing, and now saw how that gesture had become the seed of a grand alliance. As darkness settled and stars filled the sky, Aya and Mara joined the celebration below. Laughter, music and song rose in a blend of human drums and Cena Prime windpipes. Hand in hand, they led the first dance of the Unity Festival, a circle of two worlds moving as one. And under the watchful gaze of twin moons, humanity and Cena Prime stepped into a new era of friendship and discovery, bound forever by respect, trust, and the simple power of a bow.